So Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was directed by Jeff Fowler, and once again it stars Ben Schwartz, Jim Carrey, James Marsden, Tika Sumpter. This time Idris Elba's involved. And this time around, Sonic has been living with James Marsden and Tika Sumpter for a while. And now that he's kind of growing up a bit, he's got to take on new responsibilities. All of a sudden, Dr. Robotnik comes back and he has a companion who's kind of like Sonic with Knuckles, voiced by Idris Elba. And now there's all this chaos ensuing in another Sonic movie. So surprisingly, this was one of the few movies of this year that I was actually kind of looking forward to. The first Sonic movie's entertaining enough. It's better than what I expected it to be, but not necessarily a great movie. I do have the Blu-ray, obviously, but and the trailers honestly didn't look. Honestly, the trailers actually looked pretty good. So I was actually kind of excited for this. The same creative team was coming back. The trailer looked like it was upping the ante a bit. Idris Elba sounded really good as Knuckles, and he had Tails involved with this. And overall, I think this movie is okay. I guess it really depends on how much you enjoyed the first Sonic movie. Because if you love the first Sonic movie, you're probably going to enjoy this. If you didn't, you're probably not going to enjoy this movie very much. As for me, I thought the first Sonic movie was fine. Definitely had some problems, and this movie is fine, but I think the problems are a little more obvious, I feel like. So, what works? Honestly, a lot of the performances in this movie are really good. Jim Carrey he's good in this movie. He's not quite as good as he was in the first Sonic movie, but he's good enough. Idris Elba steals the entire show. I thought he was really good as Knuckles. At first, I thought, that sounds like a weird casting choice. And then I heard him in that trailer. It's like, no, it's perfect. He's really good. Ben Schwartz, for the most part, is pretty good. I'm going to talk about him in my negatives a little bit. Also, I would say half the jokes are funny. There are some where I was like kind of surprised that they actually went in a certain direction. Where I actually do like it when the jokes kind of like go in a completely different direction that you didn't expect. And there were some jokes in this movie that were funny. There were some jokes that were pretty lame, but you know, I kind of would prefer that over the product placement of the last movie. Also, visually, it was really impressive to see, and also the last 30 minutes alone in this movie honestly make this movie worth watching. The last 30 minutes of this movie honestly save most of the movie because I feel like a lot of it just kind of like goes through the motions rather than, actually doing a story that I feel like is actually, I don't know. There are a lot of moments in this movie that I kind of just didn't care for. And let's start with, that kind of goes into my negatives. The movie is a little too long. The first movie was fine with like 100 minutes. This one just pushes it to being barely over 2 hours. And I think that was a mistake. I feel like they should have tightened a lot of these scenes or really just cut out certain scenes entirely, shorten them a bit. You could have removed that entire dance scene in the pub, you know what I mean. And also, I also didn't like the lack of James Marsden and Tika Sumpter in this movie, even though like when Sonic and Tails are together, it's cool. I was kind of missing the chemistry between Sonic and and James Marsden in this movie. I just felt like they were kind of like off to the side a bit, and I felt like they should have been brought back into this movie a little bit more. They were kind of just thrown off to the side a bit. Also, there are some plot lines in this movie that are kind of just dropped, kind of just forgotten about. And I just I kind of thought to myself afterwards, wait, where was that gonna go? And it never comes back, unfortunately. I won't go into detail or anything, but there are some moments in this movie where I go, you could have wrapped that up a little bit better, but they didn't. And even though the product placement is not as rampant in this movie, even though there's another Olive Garden joke in this movie, the pop culture references are still really bad. There's this one scene in a restaurant, and it's really embarrassing. Honestly, it would be embarrassing if if this movie came out around the time that song was popular. It's just that embarrassing. It was annoying, and I feel like even though there are some good performances throughout, again Idris Elba, Jim Carrey, even Colleen O'Shaughnessy who returns as Tails, she's really good. Ben Schwartz as Sonic, he was kind of like almost borderline like John Ralphio from Parks and Recreation. Like he was kind of like his character on that show. And it kind of annoyed me for a bit, to be honest. And I don't know, I felt like Sonic wasn't as good as he was in the first movie. So it can be fun. The last 30 minutes of this movie saved the movie. But I just feel like, there are a lot of things that work. Some performances are really good, some jokes are funny, visually amazing. Again, the last 30 minutes, I gotta praise the last 30 minutes of this movie. I won't spoil anything, but they make up for the movie. And it's too long, some jokes don't work, scenes should have been tightened. I wish the characters were kind of brought in a bit more, and I kind of wish that plot lines were kind of better resolved. And I feel like they gotta stop with these pop culture references in kids' movies. I've hated that ever since I was a kid. Like, they just think if they reference something that was popular once, it's gonna be funny now. It's just not. It's annoying. Stop doing that. It's, again, if you enjoyed the first Sonic movie, this is going to be just as good. If not, you're probably not going to like this one as much. So, it all really depends on how you felt about the first movie, because it's pretty much not necessarily like this first movie at all, because it's a little bit more dramatic than the first movie, which I didn't expect from a Sonic the Hedgehog movie. But overall, it's, again, your opinion about the first movie will determine your opinion about this one. So I think I'm going to try to give it the same grade I gave the first one, which was like 2.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. It's definitely worth a watch. So, I don't know. So what'd you think of Sonic the Hedgehog 2? Also, what's a video game you want to see as a movie? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat, and stay safe.